It's Monday morning at Brian's school. Last week at school was so hectic and boring for him. While on the school bus this morning, he imagined how much fun he would have in school this week. He imagined himself laughing so hard at lunch with his friends, listening to interesting stories of Mrs. Ray. Well, it has not happened, but it could be true that Brian would have a great time at school this week. This is just an example of fiction. A lady imagining herself dressed like a man. How about that? So fiction, like we learned in one of our previous lessons, is a form of any work that deals in part or whole with information or events, imaginary and invented by the writer. And there are different types of fiction. They include mystery, fantasy, fable, allegory, parables, romance, folktales, and creative writing. What is mystery? Mystery is a fictional story about something that is impossible or difficult to figure out. It can be a secret, riddle, or puzzle which needs intelligence in order to reveal the unknown. Mysteries are mostly focused on investigation activity, where a detective has to solve a puzzle to find a solution to a crime or crack the case. An example is Sherlock Holmes by Arthur Conan Doyle. Have you seen Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling? Isn't it a fiction? Well, it is. And it is categorized under a type of fiction known as fantasy. So what then is fantasy? Fantasy is a type of fiction that employs magic and other supernatural phenomena as the primary plot element, theme, or setting. It usually takes place in imaginary worlds where magic and magical creatures are common. It is not horror or science fiction because it steers clear of scientific and macabre themes, respectively. However, it is possible for there to be an overlap with these other kind of stories. An example of fantasy is Harry Potter by J.K. Rowling. Fable is a fictional story in prose that features animals, mythical creatures, plants, inanimate objects, or forces of nature which are anthropomorphized. Examples are given human qualities such as verbal communication, and that illustrates or leads to an interpretation of moral lesson. It is usually rounded off with a pithy maxim. Allegory is more of a rhetorical device in which characters or events in a literary, visual, or musical art form represent or symbolize ideas and concepts. It conveys hidden messages through symbolic figures, actions, imagery, and/or events. Parables are stories that teach a lesson. They are didactic in nature and are written in prose or verse. They illustrate one or more instructive lessons or principles. It differs from a fable because they are human characters rather than animals, flowers, and the likes. It is a type of analogy. We have folktales. They are stories or legends handed down from generation to generation, usually by oral retelling. Folktales often explain something that happens in nature or convey a certain truth about life. Creative writing is any writing that goes outside the bounds of technical forms of literature. It is identified by an emphasis on narrative crafts, character development, and the use of various traditions of poetry and poetics. It can be technically considered to be any writing of original composition. In the actual sense, creative writing is a more contemporary and process-oriented name for what has been traditionally called literature, including the variety of its genres. And so today, we have looked at the types of fiction, but we'll be stopping our class here today. See you in the next one.